Coming to you from the mountains and the plains. The only conservative voices brave enough to push back. This is the Conservative Daily Podcast with Joe Altman.
That's what the Second Amendment was designed to do. If you're going to do something to nullify or take away my rights under the Constitution, come get it.
Max McGuire.
When you look at politicians on the left, they need to convince people that they are victims.
A resistance to the resistance.
And now your hosts, Joe Altman and Max McGuire.
And welcome back to another edition of the Conservative Daily Podcast. My name is Max McGuire. Joe is on his way in classic Joe fashion. He is a couple minutes out, but we're going to start on time since we have people waiting and we have a lot to get through. So when he comes in, we'll add him to the lineup. But for now, we're going to get started as we advertised yesterday. Today, we're going to be talking about education, schools. Lots to talk about. So there's going to be lots of different issues that we kind of touch on. The lockdowns, the school closures, online learning, e-learning, whatever you want to call it. The teachers' unions demanding vaccines and then not going back anyway. What's going on in Chicago. We'll talk about the transgender bathroom order. We're going to touch on all of it. Suicides, teen suicides, as depressing a topic as that is, we've seen, as we predicted last year, keeping kids out of school will lead to more fatalities as a result of mental illness than the virus itself. So we're going to cover all of this. But again, just want to let everyone know, our phone lines are open. If you're a teacher, if you're an educator, if you're an administrator, a janitor, lunchroom lady, or just a parent, 888-441-1121 is our number. If you want to call in and let us know what your experience has been so far this year with e-learning, with online learning, with going back to school, and just we're open for your feedback because obviously I'm a parent, but my kids are pretty young, a 3-year-old and a newborn, so they're not in school yet. But I understand a lot of what parents are feeling having their kids out of school. So we're welcoming anyone who has anything really to say about this. 888-441-1121 is our number. But before we do a deep dive into that, I want to play this because I came across this and it's just one of those head-scratching moments. It is Kamala Harris saying that if you work in a coal mine, you're going to have to get a new job clearing landmines. Very strange clip, but we're going to play it. Mr. Producer, play cut 0.
So it's job creation around investing in American manufacturing, job creation in terms of investing in American infrastructure and building up, back up American infrastructure, job creation around, for example, all of those skilled workers who are in the coal industry and transferring those skills to what we need to do in terms of dealing with reclaiming abandoned landmines, what we need to do around plugging leaks from oil and gas wells and transferring those important skills to the work that has yet to be done that needs to get done.
So don't worry if you're out of work. There's lots of jobs out there apparently to clear abandoned landmines. Last time I checked, I actually did check, there are no abandoned landmines in the United States. There has never been a land war in the United States since the advent of landmines. It happens in Africa, it happens in Southeast Asia, it happens in South America where they've had wars and they've had landmines put in the ground and then they have to go back and clear them. But last time I checked, there are no landmines in the United States. And if there was, you wouldn't be able to take a coal miner and just teach him how to clear landmines. I mean, they have trained animals that know how to clear landmines. I've seen rats trained to sniff them out. I know that there's special robots that can clear landmines and can take the blast. It's one of those head-scratching moments. Don't worry, we're getting rid of your jobs. We're going to put you out there clearing landmines. Doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So, we're going to get kicked off with this education double hour. And I want to start by playing a clip from Reuters where they're explaining what's going on in Chicago. Because what's happening in Chicago pretty much encapsulates everything that's been happening at one point or another around the country. You have the school boards, you have the teachers union, and you have the parents, all with competing interests. Just in Chicago, it's very interesting because you have Lori Lightfoot, a.k.a. Mayor Beetlejuice. Again, if you say Lori Lightfoot's name 3 times outside, a mass shooting will happen, apparently. Beetlejuice, Beetlejuice, Beetlejuice. You have complete Democrat control of the public schools in Chicago, and yet you still can't get agreement. So it's not like it's conservative school district against a liberal teachers union. The left is eating its own. So in order to get, not everyone is from Chicago, and I get that. I think it's the 3rd or 4th largest school district in the country. We're going to start out with this clip from Reuters explaining what's going on in Chicago this week with the teachers union and the public schools. Let's go ahead and play cut number 1.
Classrooms were empty Wednesday in the nation's 3rd largest school district after the Chicago Teachers Union voted to defy an order to return to in-person learning. Now, teachers are threatening to stop working altogether if the district retaliates against any of those who fail to report to school buildings Wednesday. The Chicago Teachers Union, which represents the city's 25,000 school educators, has been locked in negotiations with Chicago Public Schools for months over the gradual reopening of schools for the system's 355,000 students. The labor dispute came to a head on Sunday when the union membership voted 71% in favor of a resolution not to return to the classroom and to remain teaching remotely until a stronger health and safety agreement is reached. Despite the vote, the district ordered some 10,000 teachers to report to work on Wednesday instead of Monday as initially planned. Some 70,000 elementary and middle school students who opted to take classes both in person and online are due to return at the beginning of next week. As of early Wednesday afternoon, it was unclear how many teachers reported for work at their schools. Chicago Public Schools CEO Janice Jackson warned on Sunday that if teachers did not report to schools on Wednesday, it would be construed as an illegal strike. In a message to teachers on Tuesday night, the union said that if the district takes action against teachers who did not report, members will stop working altogether on Thursday and picket, the Chicago Tribune reported. Similar labor battles have unfolded across the country, pitting teacher unions against district officials over conditions for reopening, almost a year after the virus shut down schools for 50 million students.
So that was just a kind of a brief explanation. Anyone who hasn't been following what's going on in Chicago, you have the parents desperately want their kids back in school because their jobs are bringing them back. Right? It's one thing if the parents are forced to work from home or forced to go home because they're laid off. But once they get back to work, they rely on schools to play, in many ways, a daycare role. Not saying that teachers are daycare, but the parents need someone to take care of their kids during the day in order for them to work, especially if they're not working out of the house. So the parents want them in. The city government wants the schools open because they realize the effect it will have on the economy if people can't get back to work. They understand that it's completely a trickle-down effect. If the schools are closed, the economy won't be able to really function. So you have Lori Lightfoot, a.k.a. Mayor Beetlejuice, trying to reopen the schools. But you also have the teachers union complaining that they don't feel safe. Now, we're going to get into it with the WHO and the CDC for what it's worth. Take it with a grain of salt. But they've both released reports indicating that schools are not a major vector of disease transfer, and that anyone who says that they are is just making it up. So it's just such a strange dynamic. Leftists, all fighting with each other. And the kids are just left in the middle, right? Who's gonna care about the kids? Obviously, the parents care about the kids. But you think that the teachers would care about the kids, that would want the kids to be learning in class. It doesn't seem like they do. It doesn't seem like they do. So again, our call-in number, 888-441-1121. Spending 2 hours talking about education, so we're going to need your calls. If you're a parent, if you're an educator, administrator, janitor, lunch lady, whatever, call in. Let us know what your experience has been so far with the schools, with the e-learning, and what you think about what's going on in Chicago and around the country. It's been really fun watching these leftists melt down on Twitter because it really is the left eating its own. Mr. Producer, go ahead to image number 1. This is a tweet from Chicago Public Schools. Well, first, the teachers union. Image 1, Mr. Producer. Teachers union said, bargaining update. The CPS bargaining team was instructed not to attend negotiations today unless our teachers, clinicians, PSRPs, nurses, librarians, and other rank-and-file educators were prepared to make major concessions. Colorado Public Schools claps back. Fact check. Our bargaining team was told by CTU leadership that they were unavailable to meet until they could develop a response to our most recent offer. Our team has been standing by all day. Really funny to see them just going at each other. So then the teachers union fought back, put up image number 2. Teachers say they want COVID-19 vaccine before they head back to the classroom. I don't understand why we have to risk our lives when we are so close to a vaccine, a Chicago teacher said. Well, you have to go back to school. You're an essential employee. I mean, all last year, you had essential employees doing their jobs. You had people who were deemed unessential begging for the right to go back to work, right? Everyone in the country wanted to work, except for the teachers, apparently. The teachers are willing to just cede that they are not essential workers. That's very, very dangerous. I mean, it's dangerous for the teachers union, that's for sure. The next time they go into a collective bargaining, to try and get a new collective bargaining agreement, they're going to go in having already admitted that they're pretty much non-essential. Why they would do that, I have no clue. But apparently the vaccine is playing a huge part in it. Even though Chicago has offered to vaccinate all of them, they're still saying they don't trust it. They still don't want to go to work. Pretty incredible stuff. So then you have Chicago Public Schools and Mayor Lori Lightfoot trying to shame them into going into school. Ms. Brucer, put up image number 3. This is Mayor Lori Lightfoot saying, since the beginning of this pandemic, our Chicago Public Schools nutrition staff have been in our schools every weekday, making sure that none of our CPS students go without breakfast or lunch. Hundreds of meal sites are open for CPS students until 1 p.m. today. Chicago Public Schools retweeted. Go to image number 4. Janice K. Jackson, a former principal, also retweeted by Chicago Public Schools. Thank you to all of our SEIU members who have never stopped coming into work every day to make sure our schools are clean, safe, and ready for students and staff. And that's SEIU Local 73 is pleased to announce we have reached an agreement with CPS regarding remote work and in-person learning for our members. And then, of course, image number 5. Chicago Teachers Union claps back. This feels petty. This feels petty. Well, no. They're talking about how every other person involved, the lunch ladies, the sanitation, the janitors, right? They've all been coming in no problem. It's the teachers that just don't want to come in, saying, nope, not going to do it. Even as the e-learning shows it's a complete failure, they still don't want to do it. We have Wendy on the phone, wants to talk about how pulling her kids out of school was the best decision she's ever made. I like that. Wendy, welcome to the show.
Amen. Amen. I honestly, my husband and I talk about it repeatedly about how if this had never happened, we probably would have continued on the path of public schools and would never have been enlightened as to all the curriculum things that we have just recently kind of been digging into and have come out as a result of, the Biden administration pulling some crazies. So
when did you pull your kids out?
One of the best things we ever did. We did it this summer.
Okay.
So this has been our first year of homeschooling. Okay,
so they didn't go back to school in the fall. Do you mind sharing what state you live in, just so I can get a feel for what kind of lockdowns you'd be under?
Yeah, we're in Virginia under Wreck-It Ralph, north of them, yeah. So they do have the schools. They do have some schools open. They're 2 days a week, and then if you're a parent that doesn't want your child to be exposed to a virus, then you can do 100% at home learning. Now we're doing a co-op, so my kids are 15 and 11, and we're doing 2 different co-ops. So 2 days a week they go and they meet with what they're called as tutors, and these tutors go through all the 5 subjects, and they're using Christian curriculum. Their history is incorporating creation through today, and it's just been such like a great experience for my husband and I.
So your kids were e-learning online last spring.
Yes. Oh,
so how did that work out?
Failure. It was a complete failure. We didn't get one call from a teacher the whole time checking in to see how they were. They were, every once in a while they would post a PowerPoint presentation that was supposed to cover what they were, what they would do in class, but it was a PowerPoint presentation. It wasn't even the teacher using the technology that they have at home to get on and digitally teach. Like, go through the lesson.
Wow.
If you're at home and you can do it as well as you can put a PowerPoint presentation together. So then our school district was they didn't even know what they were going to be doing up and through the end of July. And my husband and I were just like, these kids are going to be test dummies, for however long this works. So, our kids were in pretty advanced classes for everything. So we just didn't want to see them go backwards. And what they're doing in our
grades flipping?
It was such a short period of time, and two of my kids are very much self-starters, so they stayed on top of their stuff without me having to kind of guide them. But I think that, and they did away with the end of the year testing, which is ridiculous anyway. And most parents don't really believe in it anyway.
It's excellent that you've taken them out and now you're doing a co-op. How many families did you say were in that co-op?
Well, between the two different co-ops, the one is, I would say there are probably 80 to 90 families.
Oh, wow.
And the other co-op probably has, I would guess, like 30 to 40 kids. And the co-op that my older daughters are going to are actually a college prep co-op. So they don't just get by the skin of their teeth. These tutors are committed to helping the kids be ready for college if that's the avenue that they want to take. So
one last question. Oh, go ahead. Finish your thought.
No, I was just going to say, I don't think that parents really, because it's so easy to just put them on the bus and it's easy to send them to public school. Like in our position, our public school bus picked our kids right up outside our front door. It was so easy. And for me, it was like, why would I ever do anything different? And then, I would say this like God moment over, having the pandemic and hit was really something that shook us up. And, why would parents pull their kids out of public school other than having something like this shake it up a little bit? And this, to me, is the opportunity for people to look at, like, you hear the phrase new normal, and it's such an idiotic phrase, but it really is a better new normal for us. And I don't think a lot of people want to even look at it as an opportunity to improve your situation.
So one more question for me, and then I'll turn it over to Joe if he has any questions. My question is, if you don't mind me asking, 90 families in a co-op seems like a pretty healthy number. I've seen some of the co-ops where they just do as a neighborhood 5, 6, 7. How much, if you don't mind me asking, how much are you paying a month for this option?
So for all three kids, basically both co-ops are similar in pricing. You're paying the tutor fee. So we're paying for a mother, a mom or dad. It could be, there are some dads that are doing it, but for the most part it's mom. We're paying them to tutor our kids. So to me, it's a much more of a personal payment than for me to just go pay a private school tuition. So for all three kids, we're paying about $2,000 a month for all three kids.
I mean, considering how much private school costs, that's not bad at all. Joe, do you have any questions?
Well, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm glad that you can afford the $2,000 a month. Obviously it's a sacrifice for you and your family, but there's so many people out there that can't afford it, right? That can't afford that, and are watching their kids fall farther and further behind. And now with the 1619 project and trying to shove gender identities down people's throat and all the other things that they're trying to do in the schools.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Sorry.
And in our school in Virginia, and I don't know if it's in our district specifically, but in the Virginia, some of the things that Virginia is trying to push as far as the gender identity goes is that and I know this is in Biden's rollout of his executive orders, is that the kids and the teachers have to identify the students with their pronoun that they request. So if my son thinks that she's a girl, he's going to say her or she, and you can get reprimanded as a student for not following the proper pronoun that student wants to be called. So Sam would be the one punished, not, So
yeah,
how are
I hear your son in the background. What did I do?
Yeah. How are the sports? How are the sports working in your co-op? Do you have sports teams?
Not many. The co-ops. There are a couple co-ops that offer sports, but ours don't. We pretty much. Well, we finished out our flag football year, and they stopped allowing parents to even come to the games to watch. So I was like, well, that's the state again trying to fall in line under everything else. When the whole season, we had been coming to watch his games. So the last couple games, when they stopped letting parents come, I was like, well, sorry, that's what I enjoy doing. So if I can't watch him play, then you're going to miss out. So, I mean, that might not have been the right way to go because it probably would have disappointed the coaches. But in my opinion, if people don't start doing that kind of stuff, then they're just going to keep on plowing through with what's going on now. Now we started doing like snowboarding lessons and things that don't require us to be like underneath the influence of wearing the masks and getting your temperature checked for every lesson or every practice. So we started doing a couple different things. There are some organizations in and around our area that are starting to, like in my opinion, if somebody had a sign on the dotted line, if you don't care what your child is exposed to and you would like your child to play, like, I don't know what that's called. There's a formal word for it, but it's escaping me.
A liability waiver.
Yeah, yes, like some sort of waiver that you would just sign and say, we're okay with this. We would like to move on. Please let me sign here. So that's what a couple programs have started doing, and it's parents that are just like sick of everything.
Well, so. I think the parents are going to have to be the answer, right? So if we keep saying, hey, we've gone far enough down this path, right, where education has been eroded, we can date it back to the 1920s, 1930s when progressionism actually entered education, right? And we've been fighting against it for a very long time, but I do believe we have muscle memory, so we can back it up. We can get rid of all this stuff. It's just going to take parents actually waking up. And I think that's one of the things that the pandemic has actually done is it's woken up parents to, what do you mean you're learning math that way? What do you mean in civics you're talking about? Yeah. There's a new civics course that they're trying to push out, just so you know. And that civics course is teaching them about protest. So the whole class is around actually rising up protesters. That's in school.
Okay.
Right?
Well, I was one of those at the White House at the Capitol, and I obviously didn't step foot in the Capitol, but it was my son being able to be with me there that day and observe what went on, and then how as soon as we got into the bus to go back home, it was a completely different feeling from what we had all day. Like that feeling of this is an amazing experience. There are so many great people here. So it was so friendly. Yeah. And then, in the blink of an eye, that very peaceful protest turned into something that, everybody is now. It
really didn't. It wasn't that many people that went into the Capitol.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, absolutely.
And frankly, they don't stand for me. They don't speak for me, right? Much like a racist doesn't speak for me either. I'm not racist, and you don't get to put me in that corner. You want to actually seek out racism, then find the racist, the real racist, right? But I just don't believe that. I believe we have to call the loony left what they are, because that event, even up to that point, people were like, "What are you doing?" You see the videos of people saying, "Hey, listen, what are you guys doing? Get out of there. We don't do that. Get back." Right? But they were being led in. Yeah, and again,
they were being led and pushed. We had friends up there on the steps that were like, "We're not sure what's going on, but the police have opened the doors and there's people going in."
Yeah.
So it was just all.
Wendy,
anyway,
before we let you go, give us a final thought on what you think needs to happen with the school system.
Well, for sure. I mean, I'm as guilty as any for not showing up at the school board meetings and not thinking that my voice has really much to do with the big picture. So I, in a way, felt guilty when we pulled our kids out. Like, I wanted my kids to be in the school system, in there with the kids that they could influence, either spiritually or emotionally. That was one of the reasons why we were okay with public school, was we wanted our kids to be the ones in there making change. But at this point in time, it wasn't the right moment for us to have our kids, it's like, do you keep them in there to let them get pulled so far down that they themselves now are one of the kids in the crowd? But I think for sure more parents, and I would even for myself and my husband still be a part of the local school board meetings, and to know who is on your school board and to be involved at the local level. One of the things that I'm trying to get a group of moms here do is pay more attention to the things that are going on within our community, homelessness and hunger and abortion clinics locally, trying to do things every day that impact our area. And hopefully that sort of movement spreads into the bigger picture.
Well, that's definitely something that should be at all levels. More parent involvement. Yeah. If you haven't gone to a PTA meeting, definitely go, because this is the time where you need to have your voice heard. Well, thank you so much for the call, Wendy. Really do appreciate it. And I hope that the community schooling effort that you have going on, I hope it's very, very successful. Thank you so much for the call. So we do have a clip of a parent at a Virginia basically school board meeting in Loudoun County. And this has started to go viral because he gets really pissed off. He gets really, really pissed off, and he isn't afraid to show it. Mr. Producer, go ahead and play cut number 10.
Yep. You should all be fired from your day jobs, because if your employers knew that you were more inefficient than the DMV, you would be replaced in a heartbeat. I literally just finished a conference call because I'm having to multitask to be here to address you guys. You're a bunch of cowards hiding behind our children as an excuse for keeping schools closed. You think you're some sort of martyrs because of the decisions you're making, when the statistics do not lie that the vast majority of the population is not at risk from this virus. The garbage workers who pick up my freaking trash risk their lives every day more than anyone in this school system. Figure it out or get off the podium. Because you know what? There are people like me and a line of other people out there who will gladly take your seat and figure it out. It's not a high bar. Raise the freaking bar.
And they sit there stoic. They sit there stoic as if, oh, I'm sorry, maybe this will pass too. People are not going to be, they're not going to be pacified anymore. They're not.
I love that. I love that speech.
That guy, by the way, do you know who he is? Do you know what he does for a living?
I don't know anything about him. Just I saw the clip and it sounds amazing.
Yeah, so he's a fund manager. He's actually really, really smart, right? Smart dude. And he just has had enough. He's just pushed to the point where, and that's what has to happen. People who are just normal people that are out there have to just have enough, and then stand next to other people that have had enough. It is crazy. I'm going to send this. I'm going to send this over to. I'm going to send this over to Josh right now. Josh, I'll send it to you so you can actually put it up. So we'll keep going. But it's a English assignment. So in English, you learn about what?
English. You're supposed to learn about English, yeah. Sentence structure, spelling.
Yeah. So what they did is they took a post in English class that talked about gender fluidity, and that it's actually a study has been done to show that even if you're a boy or a girl, that you don't have to accept that you're not born a boy and a girl. You get to decide who you are, right?
Yeah.
This is in 9th grade English right here in Colorado, right?
So why don't we get to that towards the end, because we're going to talk about that a little later, the different crazy things that they're going on with. But send that over to Josh, and we'll put that up. We have Steve on the line. Steve says that he's been through pretty much every type of school system, and he wants to comment about how he feels about what the teachers are doing. Steve, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Max. Thanks, Joe. Yes, I went through private school, public school, charter school, homeschool, and what I realized was that was not a good way of going through school because it was not consistent.
Right.
And if we're talking about consistency, our political arrangement is not consistent right now. Like every single 4 years, you have a Republican who does one thing with Betsy DeVos, and now you have another thing that's doing their thing, which is the complete polar opposite. If you have kids, I have 2 kids. I have a 4-year-old and I have a 2-year-old. You want consistency.
Yeah.
The only way that you're going to get consistency is through private school. And my wife is an educator, and we both have we went to a very good college. I won't say which one, but it was a very good college. Max, you can try to figure it out, but it was a very good college.
So, what you're saying is absolutely correct. Consistency is key. And what we saw last year was just like a light switch. All of a sudden, surprise, surprise, you're not doing in-class learning anymore. You're going home. And, I mean, there's tons that's been written on the effect of that. People who, they sent the kids home, and the kids are like, wait a minute, I don't even have a laptop. I don't even have an internet access, right? Kids having to go to fast food restaurants to hop on their Wi-Fi to do their school assignments. And the whole time we're being told by the left, don't worry. Trust the experts. E-learning, online learning, virtual learning will be good. We'll be able to teach the kids. And what we've seen is it's an abysmal failure, not just because it's a horrible way to teach kids, but also, as you mentioned, the lack of consistency. Kids who have been A students showing up for school every day, going online, all of a sudden they're failing.
They're not doing distance learning all over the world. Kids in China are back in school. Yeah, they got to wear a mask and a face mask, but they're back in school, sitting in front of their desk. Right? What we're doing here. Go ahead. Sorry.
My wife is she teaches in Colorado, and it's back in school. Like that's what we're doing. And despite the fact that we have a Democrat governor, I kind of give him a little bit of props. The fact that the kids are back in school, and that's actually a good thing. Most schools, yes. This is a private school. It's a private pod, I would say. But going back to the consistency part, what made me realize is the fact that these schools have a kind of control over their kids. The next step with the Biden administration will be kids. We saw this with Polis. He really went after preschool, kindergarten kids, okay? And I think that the amount of control that Coloradans have with their kids with school choice is going to be ripped away pretty quickly.
Oh, it absolutely will be. It absolutely will be.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And that's what we need to look out for. That's the next step. It's the control over the power that they can have. The next step, which we saw this with Soviet Union, with China, with all these other, dictatorial states. The next step is really the kids, and the younger you can get them, the better that you can have. And so we think that for our kids, like private school is like the last stand. When they rip away a private school and they're going to go after accreditation, they're going to basically say that you cannot be accredited unless it is approved by the federal government.
Or they won't give you, or they won't give you any rebate on your property taxes. There's lots of games they can play, right? They can force you to keep paying for the kid's spot on the school bus, even if he's not using it. Lots of different games they can play, and we've already seen them start to play those games.
My property taxes are $1,700 a year in Colorado Springs. $1,100 of that goes, I would say $1,400 of that goes to a defunct District 11 school.
Yeah,
like it's absolutely horrendous. And I wish that I could just take my money and give it to the school that I think is better.
Steve, are you down in Colorado Springs?
I am.
Right,
I'm in Old Colorado City.
Have you heard of Liberty Tree Academy, Falcon?
It was propped up by Hills College, which I am a alma mater of. Okay,
so I actually this morning, the reason why I was late is that one of the things that I've been working on is creating schools, right? Like how do we create schools? How do we counteract what they're doing to our children? And the easiest way to do it is to choke it off, right? So there's legislation coming down that'll actually let the money follow the child. That'll really help with that. But when I walk through this school, it's impressive. It not only is impressive, what the kids are learning is unbelievable. It's unbelievable.
I know, because I was taught by the same people who started that school. I understand, Joe, exactly what you experienced because I went through it.
Yeah. Exceptional.
The only problem is every charter school they're tied to the public school system.
Yeah.
And that's what Liberty Tree is. That's the big problem. Well, and my wife and I, we both went to Hillsdale. I think that they went with that model because, it costs a lot to start a school. It really does. Education is expensive.
It really is.
If we can do a lean business model with school, Joe, that's something that we can work with.
Right.
That's a different model that's never been done before. My wife is doing it right now, but they need proper procedures and a really efficient model. And that's all that teachers need to be paid $45,000 a year. Bottom line.
Yep. They work 7 months out of the year.
Thank you so much for the call, Steve. We gotta let you go because the phone lines are blowing up, and we want to make sure we can get as many calls on the air as possible. But thank you for the call. Really do appreciate it. Want to play a quick clip as we keep going back and forth. Since the next caller wants to talk about the unions, I want to play a quick clip from Lori Lightfoot, again, Mayor Beetlejuice from Chicago, admitting this week that remote learning has been a complete and total failure. Let's play cut 2.
Remote learning doesn't work for everyone, especially our students most in need, and I'll talk a little bit more about that important point in a moment. This includes our youngest students, our special needs students, and our low-income students. And a key part of our effort to get students back in the class has been engaging with the Chicago Teachers Union leadership, especially listening to their concerns and being laser focused on reaching an agreement that everyone is comfortable with that requires compromise on both sides. This effort has included more than 70 formal meetings since June, with these meetings occurring 7 days a week for the past 2 weeks. We have sought to address a broad range of issues which, since our schools first closed nearly a year ago, Dr. Jackson and her team have moved mountains to address.
So we have Angela on the line. Angela is a science teacher who wants to talk about the teachers union, where that money goes. Angela, welcome to the show.
Yeah, hi. Thanks for having me. I have so much to say, but me and my husband are teachers in the Midwest. I'll just say Midwest, and our union dues go directly to the Democratic Party. So it went directly to Biden, which is ridiculous because not everyone shares that viewpoint. And so that's one of my frustrations, and I think teachers are the number one suicide preventer.
Agreed.
Because they are they're just that extra barrier if kid is struggling, and kids are just home. Like our neighborhood, no one plays outside because everyone's scared, and the media has scared teachers so much. And I don't know why, but teachers just go along with it. They think the media is correct. They're so scared of the virus, but it's all lies. And so I have so many teacher friends who are just stuck in that mindset. And then they don't want to go back to school, right? Because, hey, I can teach in Florida on the beach. And so they're just being lazy, too. And they need to get their butts off the couch and into the schools because we are one of the frontline workers.
It's not even important anymore. The kids aren't important. I think unions have outstayed their welcome. I think they've outstayed their use. And actually, you see higher scores in schools that are not unionized. That's not a mistake, right? And charter schools have a much higher rate of literacy and a much higher rate of math proficiency. But we don't want to talk about that. We want to continue to prop up these unions that are destroying our society. I mean, you're right. Teachers, I was in Florida, and I walked into a coffee shop, and I was talking to them, and she's like, yeah, I got a class to prepare for. I go, oh, you're going to school? She goes, no, I'm a teacher. I go, where? She said, New York. And I go, what are you doing down here? She goes, well, I do everything online. And I went, wait, what? And that's the point that you're saying, is that they get to do whatever they want. Hey, kids are unimportant. It's all about me and safety, right?
Yep.
Angela, you mentioned that teachers are suicide prevention. I think something that often gets forgotten is that teachers are often the frontline defense against domestic abuse as well.
Yeah,
if a
100%.
kid comes in battered and bruised or psychologically traumatized, the teachers are the ones who see that, notice it, and report it. So without in-class learning, not only have we seen an increase in suicides, which we'll get to later in the show, but we've also seen domestic abuse go unreported. And the statistics show a steep drop in domestic abuse. That's not because husbands and wives aren't beating their children anymore. It's because the teachers aren't there to notice it. And so you mentioned the suicide prevention, and you're absolutely right. But the other missing piece of that is also domestic violence and things like that, and malnutrition, things that the teachers cannot pick up on because the kids aren't even in school.
Yeah. One more thing here. The only other thing, we got to get those private schools and charter schools to pay more, because it's way more advantageous for me to teach in the public school right now because I can get paid way more. I mean, it's poverty line if you're in a private school right now, like $30,000 a year, which is really hard for a family of 5 to live off of.
Yeah.
We've got to find a way for that to be more fair. I would go to a private school in a heartbeat if I could get paid a little bit more.
Yeah, I think that we can. I think that disparity is actually coming together. I mean, at least in some schools. So I know that the charter schools that my kids went to, and this was, they were. It was 6 years ago that they were in it, in that charter school. But the school they went to, the median was, I think, $57,000 a year, right? Which isn't
way better than where I'm at.
Yeah. So, and of course my kids went to private high school, but private school for high school, but. I think you're right, but I also think that if you got rid of the unions and you let things stabilize, that the parents would be willing to, and the tax money is there in order to support paying teachers more money at the charter schools. I just and in Colorado, the charter schools are actually funded through the public school system, so they get kind of the same type of dollars. And I think if they could equalize that as well and say, all right, if you're an institution that is private school, and maybe they could let the dollars follow the child, you'd see a lot of these private schools actually rise up and become more, a better environment as well, not just for the students, but for the teachers.
Yeah. The other thing is we just changed our standards here in the state I'm in, and we tried to get our voices heard, and they wouldn't hear them, and they changed our science standards
to
just full of evolution, full of just so much junk where it's not even teaching the students science anymore. It's so watered down, and that's the other issue too.
Yeah, well, it's a real shame when it stops being about the scientific method. I mean, you put kids in science class not necessarily to teach them the constants and the laws and the theories, but to teach them how to think critically, to teach them how to present a hypothesis and test it to see whether it's accurate or not. And just to see the politicization of it, it really is sad. Well, thank you so much for the call, Angela. I really do appreciate it. We dropped her. Well, thank you, Angela. I really do appreciate it. Anyone else who wants to call in? We had some callers that dropped. 888-441-1121. Call in. Stay on the line. We will get to you. We want to make sure we get to as many parents, teachers, administrators, janitors, lunch ladies, anyone who's involved in school who has an opinion on this. Call us and let us know. We've got a couple teachers, really good opinions on what's going on. I want to play some more clips talking about what's going on in Chicago, because Chicago is one of the biggest school districts in the country. And the teachers union is claiming that COVID-19 is just too dangerous. It's too dangerous for them to teach in classes because it'll kill them. Well, all the experts are now speaking, even though Donald Trump predicted this months ago, and he was basically criticized for it. The science has now caught up to Donald Trump's big brain, and the scientists are now agreeing with Trump, what he said all along. So let's play cut number 3. This is, I believe, a panel of experts talking about how going to school actually reduces your COVID risk. Let's play cut 3.
Maybe the most interesting thing about that data is that schools are protective. Actually, going to school reduces the risk of a child getting COVID. And that's because schools are controlled environments. When you're trying to figure out what to do with your child, because you're trying to work, you're trying to make sure they get the education they need, it means that you're probably taking some risks in environments that aren't as controlled. You don't know.
So that absolutely accurate. It's safer in school than at home. Let's play one more clip from MSNBC, cut number 4.
The CDC report that was published in JAMA summarizing the data, I think it's very, very impressive to restart in-person schools, in-person classrooms. The data are, I think, pretty compelling. And one of the things that happens in schools is you enforce mask wearing, you enforce social distancing, you enforce small pods, you enforce hand washing, and that keeps people safe. It's not absolutely safe, but it's much safer than being out in the community where those public health measures may be much more haphazardly introduced.
So just a couple brief clips. Amazing that the Democrat liberal experts are now coming back to Donald Trump's line of thinking and saying not only is it important to have schools open for the economy to keep everything running, but actually saying, remember how we said that schools would be too dangerous? Surprise, surprise. Actually, we recalculate our numbers, and it turns out it's actually safer for kids to go to school.
It's confusion. And we can go back into schools and talk about education in schools, Common Core math. Common Core math and this thing where you just let's just come up with a guess. Let's just say that maybe it might be 70. What's 40 plus 56? It may be 90-ish, right? The whole idea of Common Core is to confuse kids' brains, right? To infect their sensibilities. So you have to come over here. 2 plus 2 is no longer 2 plus 2 is 2 plus 1 plus 0.5 plus tap on your head plus rub on your belly. And then all of a sudden, yep, it's 4 maybe. I mean, some of the things that we're doing in our education system are really screwing up kids, and no one across the entire world is doing it. We're just doing it here, which should tell you that people on the outside are trying to basically influence and weaken our Constitution as a nation, right? Constitution meaning who we are, right? It's crazy. It's crazy that we're even having to deal with what we're dealing with in the education system. It's crazy that the 1619 whatever project exists. It's crazy that this gender deal. Hey, let's put that up. Put that post up real quick. Max, this was a post of something that came to one of my friends' parents. And this is mark your confusion, show evidence of a close reading, write a 1+ page reflection, And what this does is it says, it's an article by Denise Grady. Autonomy does not determine gender, expert says. And this is from New York Times, October 22nd, 2018. Now, I'll read this, and you just tell me what you think. Your kids are young. If they went into school, what you would do if this was put in front of them. So defining gender as a condition determined strictly by a person's genitals is based on a notion that doctors and scientists abandoned long ago as oversimplified and often medically meaningless. Researchers who have studied gender issues and provided health care to people who do not fit the typical MF, male-female, pigeonholes said that the Trump administration's latest plan to define gender goes beyond the limits of scientific knowledge. Quote unquote, the idea that a person's sex is determined by their anatomy at birth is not true, and we've known that is not true for decades, unquote, said Dr. Joshua D. Safer, an endocrinologist and executive director at the Center for Transgender Medicine and Surgery at Mount Sinai Health Systems in New York. He's also the president of the United States Professional Association of Transgender Health. But exactly what does determine gender identity? A person's powerful core knowledge of who they are. It is not so clear. Now, keep in mind, core knowledge, right? Core knowledge. Think about that. Core knowledge. What's the new math deal? It's core. Core knowledge math, right? Core math, right? Come on. They literally are rewriting everything about the human race. And people are said, oh, you don't believe that? You're a bigot. Think about what we're dealing with here. We're dealing with the idea that male and female no longer means male and female. An attack on our sensibilities. And by the way, if the United States falls, there's a lot of other countries that fall behind it. So by weakening what we are as a country, they are in essence killing billions of people. And that's ultimately what these guys want to do anyway, is control the population. Maybe this is how they do it. I don't know. I mean, that seems a little bit too evil for me, but I put nothing past these guys at this point.
Well, so we were going to talk about this later, but why don't we round out this hour with it? Miss Brewster, go to my screen. We're seeing a lot of stuff like this, where this leftist ideology is just infecting school curriculum. From the Gateway Pundit, D.C. public schools using Black Lives Matter curriculum that prioritizes, quote, disrupting the nuclear family, end quote. Nuclear family, the idea that it is healthy to have a father and a mother raise children. Or fine, well, let's even just take the progressive take on it. 2 parents. Disrupting the nuclear family is the idea that one-parent households are healthy, beneficial, and have no negative outcomes, which we know from the data is just not true, right? If you are raised in a household with 2 parents, you are much more likely to succeed. You're much more likely to graduate high school. You're much more likely to have a job, and you're much more likely not to have a child out of wedlock. Those are all facts that just stem from the idea of having 2 parents there to raise you, either a mother or father, or if you want to go progressive, 2 moms, 2 dads. The idea of having 2, not having only 1 parent. That's not saying that people who are single moms, single dads aren't great dads. They are. And anyone who is, and what they have to go through to keep their kids learning and healthy and growing, hats off to them. But the data shows that outcomes are best in situations where there are 2 parents there to raise the kids, because it doesn't take a village, as Hillary Clinton says, but it does take 2 parents.
Yeah, it does. I'm sorry, it does. And the fact that they've done it more to minority communities, what do you think they're saying about minorities? I mean, they're just trying to break down the constructs of everything that we stand for, not just as a country, but as a race, as a human race. I mean, they're trying to break it all down, make it impossible that, hey, everything's okay. Do drugs, you don't worry about school, you don't need it. On the university side, we get to indoctrinate you. Parents, sit down, we get to tell your kids what they think. I mean, think about that. No longer what you teach your kids in your home supersedes or should supersede what they can teach you in school. That's called indoctrination. That's called sickness. Yeah. That's called evil. Let's call it what it is. And it's run by this loony left that, frankly, this gender fluidity deal is so they can recruit kids to their sickness. That's what it is. They want to recruit kids. They want
a normalization of it.
It's not. And look, if you grow up and you're gay, you're gay. That's fine. Don't mess with a second grader and a third grader and a fifth grader and a ninth grader and say, don't worry about it. You can be whatever you want, Mr. Purple Dinosaur. No.
Well, not even second grader, third grader, ninth grader. Mr. Producer, put up my screen.
Oh, my gosh.
Seattle schools reportedly promote abolishing police with new kindergarten curriculum. Kindergarten! They're talking about defund the police in kindergarten. Instead of playing with blocks and playing with Play-Doh and learning how to share and learning your colors and your numbers and your letters, right, and learning the building blocks you need to go to first grade. No, they're going to now teach kindergartners how to defund the police. You start understanding why parents are taking their kids out of public school and putting them wherever they can afford it.
They're doing it at a record pace. I'm talking 3, 4, 5, 6% in some areas, right? Just pulling them out of school.
Yeah.
They're fighting against the very machine that's trying to destroy what we stand for. We have a representative government. Representative. Yet the looniness, this 5% or 10%, is telling the 90% what to do, and we're letting it happen.
Yeah.
We're sitting there going, let's just take them out of school. No, we have to fight. We have to fight.
Yeah.
We have to put them back in the hole they came from. And the education system, divest. Stop sending your kids to these schools. Stop supporting it. They're already hemorrhaging. Let's make them hemorrhage more. Let's go to a Hillsdale. Let's go to, frankly, there's systems out there right now where you can learn the same thing without the indoctrination. Just get the core classes. And there are people out there that have companies that they don't care anymore. They don't care if you went to Harvard or anything else. You can learn that education without the indoctrination at a school that's a tier 2. And those are the schools that I think we have to start propping up, and we got to start divesting from the other ones. They don't stand up for American values, and they certainly don't stand up for the American family. Doesn't matter what race you are. It's sick. This is sick.
Yeah. Well, they say, I'm a firm believer that racism is a product of nurturing, not nature. I don't believe that any two babies, white or black, removed from any kind of a teacher would just decide that they hate one another. I don't believe that. I believe it's a nurture. It's a nurture aspect of
100%.
it. What they're doing here is they are nurturing kindergartners to believe that the police are evil at a time when you should be teaching them to run to the police when you need help.
Right.
But teaching them that we need to abolish the police because they're killing black people? Who in their right mind would teach that to a kindergarten?
It's not even statistically right. It's not truth. But the left is, all they do is lie, 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 lie. They're liars. They're pedophiles, rapists, and closet racists. And they're liars. Let's call them what they are. Why do we dance around it? You're a liar. Simple. Liar. Yeah. Every time I put something up, liar. Fact checkers. Liars. You stand for a place where you want to create chaos. Got to go.
Yeah. Well, we got to go to our next hour. We're going to take a real quick break right now, and when we get back, we're going to dive back into the public school drama in Chicago, talk about the teachers' vaccine demands, talk about rising suicides in schools. So again, if you want to talk on the show, 888-441-1121 is our number. We will get to the calls on the other side of the break. Don't go anywhere.
Ronald Reagan famously said that our freedoms are never more than a generation away from extinction. Conservative Daily exists to make sure that never happens. With our community of 700,000 members, we fight every day to hold Congress's feet to the fire and stop them from surrendering our rights and freedoms. The fight to take this country back is not over. Please join our movement right now by going to conservative-daily.com and clicking the subscribe button to sign up for our free call to action newsletters. We have a chance to save this country, but only if we all work together. Again, this is conservative-daily.com, and don't forget to hit the subscribe button at the top. Ladies and gentlemen, the single greatest podcast in probably the history of podcasts is back. And now your hosts, Max McGuire and Joe Altman.
Now, Mr. Producer, I'm just going to call you out. Based on the new requirements in public schools, you said ladies and gentlemen. You might have just misgendered some of our audience.
Oh my goodness, I'm sorry.
Seriously, I said ladies and gentlemen.
I thought some people might identify as woodland sprites. I don't know. We have to make sure that we are completely inclusive of all 72 genders that might be in our audience.
Okay, would you like me to go through all of those right now and start that over?
No, not right now.
No. Let's do it.
I want you to check your privilege a little bit, and just make sure that the next time you bring us back from the break, you make sure to be very inclusive.
Here, I'm writing that note down now.
Of the never-ending list of genders and preferred pronouns.
So
just
you are
make sure that that's your homework.
How do you pronounce X? Is that shim?
You're gonna have to. That's part of the process of discovery. You're gonna have to figure that out for yourself.
All right, I'll
just want to make sure that we're very inclusive. Yeah,
tomorrow. All right,
we're very inclusive here. Very inclusive. Don't want to accidentally trigger anyone. Well, we do have a caller. We do have Matt on the line. Wants to follow up on what we ended the last hour with, which is the BLM curriculum. Matt, welcome to the show.
Hey, how are you today?
Good. How you doing, Matt?
Good. How you doing?
Very good. It's exciting to get to actually talk to both of you. I listened to your show. I've been only listening for like the last few months, but anyway, it just happened to be I was listening to your D-Live broadcast, and it's talking about education and what's going on in the schools, and I looking through my email, and well, what do you know? I've got an email from the principal of my first year high school son's school, and it's all about how they're putting BLM as the official first week starter of February, because it's I guess that's the new thing they're going to do now, and so it just goes over a whole because it's Black History Month, and so but the first week they're specifically stating they're focusing on BLM and the indoctrination. I mean, they even kind of mention it. I sent the email to you guys in case you want to look at it, but I guess my return to them was just telling them the truth. I mean, and I think we all need to do that. I'm not saying it's going to fix anything, but just doing our research as parents and standing up to them, I think, is important. I mean, I was infuriated. I calmed myself down a little bit before writing the principal an email, but I was very specific about the fact that they are definitely attached to as a terrorist organization, and they're a Marxist organization. So. I don't know. I just wanted to call and say hi and let you guys know that this is all happening everywhere.
If you don't mind my asking, and you don't have to answer if you don't want to get your son in trouble, what state are you calling from?
State of Washington.
Okay. Just want to get a feel for where in the country this is happening. That makes sense.
It's unbelievable.
Right outside of Seattle. It's not that surprising.
No, it's not.
Well, that's where they're doing the BLM in kindergarten, so it makes sense.
I don't know why we're letting this happen. I don't know why the parents literally have not risen up. Like we thought that people would rise up over, that we just have people that are patriots that rise up and the war gets started. I can't imagine parents letting their kids be treated this way. I mean, it's unbelievable.
No, I completely agree, Joe. And you get me all worked up every time I hear you going off. Because I feel the same way. There's a lot of us out here. I really honestly think it comes down to the fact that, and I think you guys have said that many times, we are private people. We are conservative minded. We are, we like our independence, and we certainly don't like, this is just full on in your face indoctrination. If you read this email, you'd just be like, what? like how could you even say this to me with a straight face? I'm just I'm waiting. Just astounded.
I'm waiting for someone to call attention to the fact that Black History Month is the shortest month of the year. I mean, that is itself is a microaggression.
Oh, that needs to be changed. Oh my gosh, microaggressions. My son literally came home from school and he's like, "Dad, I had this conversation with this guy and he said that I'm a racist." And I was like, "What?" He goes, "Yeah." He goes, "Because what I said," he said, "was a microaggression and it showed racist tendencies." And I said, "Did you punch him in the face?" I actually did say that. I didn't mean it, but I said it. And he goes, no, Dad.
Well, that would be a macro.
Yeah.
That would be a macro.
Yeah, let me show you what an aggression is. You want to see what an aggression is? You got a broken nose now. Now how do you feel? We've just become look,
God.
every country is trying to weaken us, and we're letting it happen. We're letting it happen. And we're turning, and the worst part about it doesn't matter what race you are. We're turning this country into a country of slaves. Like, we are becoming slaves. We are becoming people that you just pay them. They can do whatever they want with the money, right? And if you don't fall in line, we're going to persecute you. We're going to silence you. And we have to stand up. I do not believe we are too far gone. I believe we have muscle memory. We just have to have the courage to stand up and the sensibilities to stand together. That's all.
Yeah.
I completely agree with that.
Matt, do you have a final thought before we let you go?
I would say as a final thought, I would just say I think we need to, as parents and as just as more conservative-minded Christian folk, and just conservatives in general, we need to come together more and groups like you need to kind of maybe join with other groups. We need to we just need to be a lot more. We need to form rank. We need to
FEC
stand
United.
the line. Yeah,
I
know. I was looking at your site the other day.
Yeah.
Yep, I plan on looking into that for sure.
Yeah, we're doing a lot all over the country, and we're trying to create chapters and charters, and chapters for states and charters for areas. And one of the things that we're trying to also do is have micro charters, right, or chapters. And that means that we're trying to bring people in to say, hey, look, go meet at the restaurant, right? So just so you know, the revolution, I'm not saying this is a revolution, but it is going to end up there someday, just so you know. But that started in brew houses, right?
Oh, I know. Yeah, I read that. Yeah.
So we just need to make sure that first of all, we recognize that, and second of all, that we build an organization that allows people to stand together that maybe don't have the right, that don't think the same way, but having the ability to kind of grow and move towards a place where we can actually eliminate the division that they're trying to put us in, I think will be very helpful. And they are literally trying hard to divide us. Hard.
Well, thank you so much for the call, Matt.
It.
Really do appreciate it. Thanks so much for calling in. Oh, Josh cut him off as he was saying thank you. Josh, if he's saying thank you, let him say thank you. We have Kelly on the line next. Kelly took her kids out of a large classroom public school and was able to put them into a small classroom public school, and says that she's seen a definite increase in their grades. Kelly, welcome to the show.
Hi, Max. How are you?
Pretty good. So right off the bat, what state are you calling from?
New York.
Okay. Is that New York State or New York, New York?
New York State, in central New York.
Okay. I'm trying to, I don't want to dive too deep into people's personal lives. I'm just trying to get a feeling, because everyone's telling us what they're experiencing. I'm trying to understand where they're experiencing it. Because yesterday we had a caller from Oklahoma that kind of bumped against data. So just trying to get a feel for that. So you took your kid out of a large public school and into a small public school, and you said that you saw positive effects?
That is correct.
And was this past year, or was it previous?
It was this past year, this September.
Okay.
The earlier last year, when they shut down everything up here, I will tell you, my daughter really suffered because she at the time was in first grade. So I didn't think she got the greatest kindergarten education, which was very sad to me. But the first grade, the teacher she had at the time, very good family friend. She was an amazing teacher that I knew when I was younger. When she had her in first grade, for the first few months that she was actually in school, was very disappointing. And then when it got to the point where they were all remote, here she is at 6 years old. She doesn't know how to use a computer. She doesn't know how to use a tablet. Exactly.
Yeah.
So,
and first grade, kindergarten, that age group, it's a lot of hands-on. I mean, you're still doing arts and crafts. You're still learning how to build those interpersonal relationships, and putting people behind a computer screen at that age. I'm not saying that all kids at that age have ADD, but the age certainly doesn't help them pay attention, right?
That is correct. And I got to tell you, my mother, the saint she is, I have to work. I'm a single mother, but my mother basically was her teacher, because her teacher, in so many words, abandoned their classroom.
Yeah.
They once a week would do this Zoom meeting, which for me was foreign. I had no idea what that was at the time, and then it kind of just blew up to where everybody knew what it was. So, it would be her teacher and a couple of aides, and then they would be talking about what they did over the weekend. I'm like, are you kidding me? I couldn't even take it. I was so disgusted by the time summer rolled around. I started looking for schools. I just could not afford the Catholics. No way. And then I had heard of a school. It was about 20 minutes away from where we are, and got an interview. We took a walk through the school. The principal was amazing, and it's a kindergarten through 12th grade school. Very small class size, roughly outside of the COVID. They are roughly 8 to 10 students per teacher.
Oh, that's a perfect amount.
It is fantastic. So even now, though, they did have to split the classes up because of the restrictions that cousin Andy put on everybody, and they did limit everybody to 8 students per teacher. So they broke it up to 3 different classes now for second grade. And they pretty much what they have done was fast forwarded their learning, because they knew that they were lacking in first grade basics from when they stopped everything. So they started basically from first grade again. And what they did was, on a weekly basis, they sped up. And what they done, and it has broadened what her learning base is as a second grader, and I think made it greater than what it would be had I left her in that other school.
Well, what you're talking about is amazing, because people in the comment section are saying, wow, that's a great ratio. It is a great ratio. It's a great student-to-teacher ratio. And what they're able to do, because they have such a small class size, is they're able to dial in on what each student needs to make up for first grade what they lost, to make sure they have those building blocks to get to second grade, which you don't think it's that much, but if you miss the concepts in first, it becomes a lot harder to do second grade English or second grade math. So that's excellent. What concerns me is the big schools where the teachers don't have the ability to do a one-on-one to figure out what each kid is lacking to basically make up for what they missed from the lost semester last year. And they're just going to just barge ahead with a second grade curriculum, and they're going to leave kids in the dust through no fault of their own. I mean, it's really terrifying to me. We're going to talk about this in a second with standardized tests. I'm a big proponent for standardized tests this year, even if I last year didn't think they were that great. You need to know where each kid is, and you need to split them up. If you can't give them direct student-to-teacher time, you have to at least lump the kids that missed first grade in together, so they're not learning second grade without the foundational concepts. So I'm really happy that your child is able to get to a smaller class size, is getting the attention that they need, and so their grades are improving.
Oh, tremendous! I mean, I got to be honest with you. When she was in first grade, before they shut the schools down, she virtually couldn't read. I mean, obviously, as a parent, I'm reading to her every night. I'm trying to teach her the basics, and as a parent, it is hard because of her frustration level. She always did listen better to a stranger, not necessarily a stranger, but someone besides her mother. But the thing is that when now that she's been in there at school now for three almost 4 months, she can read, and she can read solidly. There's something to be said about a smaller class size with these teachers. And the thing that was hard for me to understand was the teachers that did absolutely nothing when they were shut down, and they still got paid their rate. That is, again, going back to what you said earlier about the teachers union. They are one of the worst things next to the mainstream media that are fighting against what this country stands for.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. give you one more final word before we let you go because we have more people calling in, Kelly. What's one final thing you'd want to get out there?
Honestly, if you can't get with your school board, you can't get involved with your school board itself, and you're not happy with the school in general, look for other educational options. This particular school I send my daughter to is one of the only ones in New York State that does not require out-of-district tuition. So what the additional cost that I have is the fuel to get her there every day, which is a 20-minute drive. So there are options out there. There really are.
Well, I really want to tip my hat to you. It's great that you were able to do this for your kid. A really excellent job, and I hope that they're able to get past the missing semester last year and excel in second grade. Well, thank you so much for the call, Kelly. Really do appreciate it. And again, our number 888-441-1121 if anyone wants to call in. I'm going to take a moment here, Joe, and just make sure everyone knows that we're taking these calls so people can vent, people can share their experiences, and we can educate others so they can fix the problems other people have fixed. But to do that, we need everyone to hit that share button. So if you're on Facebook, hit the share button. On YouTube, hit the share button. And if you're on DLive, share the DLive link with people. We want to make sure that we get this out to as many people as possible. Also, make sure that you like and follow our Facebook page. Give us a thumbs up and a comment. Make sure you give us a thumbs up on YouTube and comment. And on DLive, keep commenting. Very important if we want to make sure more people see this.
I love the silence.
Yeah?
You weren't going to say anything, huh?
Well, I was jumping to you. That's why I mentioned your name.
Oh, well, I thought we were going to go to the caller.
So
I was waiting for a caller
come across. Oh,
we don't have a caller. Do we have a caller? We have a caller.
Yeah, we now have.
See,
Suzanne.
I'm looking at Josh, by the way, while you're looking at me to talk. Josh is looking at me, giving me the eyeball thing, which means we have a caller. Josh, stop talking to me. You're going to make Max mad. Okay, caller.
Okay.
Who do we have on the call?
So we have Suzanne on the line.
Hi, Suzanne.
She wants to talk about how people miss school and going back to school, all the deadlines and everything.
Yeah.
Suzanne, welcome to the show.
Hi, Max. Hi, Joe. How are you guys today?
Good.
So I'm calling in from Michigan.
Oh.
Yeah, yay, Michigan. And we still do not have schools back in classroom yet. Whitmer is hoping that maybe by March 1st, maybe, depends on the numbers. And what she's allowed the school districts to do is figure out their own plan. So just come up with something and you implement it. So I've been helping my daughter, who is an essential worker, but she's been at home working with 3 kids. So I've been going over there to help with my first grader granddaughter. And it's just a debacle of how this is being handled with online. And then the schools will open up for a couple weeks. And so now bring them back to school. Then the numbers escalate. No, shut back down, go home.
Yeah.
And these kids are like yo-yos, and they're so depressed. Well, my daughter, thank God, got smart, and she's put my granddaughter in private school. And the private school was incredible. They were offering, like, cut rates to get students in just so they could teach kids. And I think my daughter's paying for the entire year $800. And this is a great school. Yeah. It was like, okay, sold. But my granddaughter is like, Mom, Grandma, I want to be within my friends in the classroom, and I'm not understanding. And these kids, they so desperately want to go back to school, and there is zero guidance and leadership from our governor. Well, yeah, we won't go there.
She's still blaming Trump. She's still blaming Trump for that.
She was blaming Trump before he was even president.
You see what she said? She said over the weekend that she believes the protests against her lockdowns were a warm-up for the Capitol insurrection. I'm just looking at her like,
this is how these people are.
What the hell are you talking about?
Yeah, we just kind of shake our head and keep praying for, recall. Yeah. But I feel so bad. And then one of my good friends is a teacher, and he's, supporting, well, it's not safe. It's like, well, that's just BS. It is too. It's safer in the schools. A lot of them have already implemented, the upgrades to the air system, the filtration system. It's like, get these kids back in school. Let them wear a mask in the classroom if that's what you really want. I'm sorry, there's no excuse. There is no excuse for these kids not being in school. It drives me nuts. So I want to tell you, Michigan is really screwed up. I mean, everybody knew that anyways from the news, but it really is screwed up. And until they can prove that this has been, politicized and that liberals acknowledge it, we have no power. We don't, because there's not enough of us who are forceful enough to speak out against everybody. We're thrown in a corner and told to shut up and sit down.
Yeah.
And I feel bad because my grandkids are suffering and their education is suffering, and it's like, well, you can't afford public or private schools once they charge regular rates. My daughter was looking into it before. It was $3,000 a month. That's insane. So you can't put them in.
And that's relatively cheap. That's still relatively cheap.
Well,
which is crazy.
Yeah, but I just want to tell you, Michigan has no idea. They've got some of the classrooms in session. My nephew's a teacher. They're still doing online, but the teachers have to report to the schools to teach the online. So, okay, what is the point?
So stupid. Yeah,
it is.
It makes no sense.
They're teaching the class from the classroom while the students are at home. Yeah. So I just want to let you know, it's just as bad here in Michigan, and I'm not really confident we're going to get this straightened out. And I think the unions are making it even worse because they're holding these kids captive and hostage, I should say. And
no, they are. They are. The unions, through all this process, the unions have revealed that everything they've said where they do what they do for the children has been a complete lie. It's been a complete lie. You can't say that you're for the children when you're refusing to go back even after they're vaccinated. Like, you just can't square that circle. And I hope that if nothing else comes out of this, I hope that people can finally wake up and just see what a destructive force teachers' unions actually are. Well, Suzanne, thank you so much for the call.
Thanks for calling.
Really do appreciate the call in. I want to mention we lines are still open, 888-441-1121. I want to talk a bit about the standardized tests. Joe, do you like standardized tests? Do you support them?
No.
You don't? Why don't you support standardized tests?
Because I think that the people teach to the test. I mean, I think that there is a testing system mechanism you can go through, right? And I mean, but I don't believe in standardized tests. I mean, a lot of times you'll go to we'll talk about inner cities that they will teach to the test very quickly, teach to the test, almost as if you're giving them the answers in order to prop up their, and then they bring them right back to the literacy rates that is 20-25%.
So that's true. There is a lot of teaching to the test. You do, though, ultimately need some of those foundational building blocks.
Right.
Like, you can teach how to answer the math portions of the test,
right.
But if you don't know multiplication, division, addition, subtraction, you're going to fail those grade school tests.
Let's talk about something, right? Really quickly, if we can. I want to ask you a question now. So if you go to school and the schools can't even get math or science or civics right, why would you think that they could get anything else right, like gender studies and all the other things they put in? Why would you think that they could have that they could actually do anything with that if they can't even get this right? Right?
I don't.
So the standardized testing to me is, why don't we get back to, and they keep saying they want to do reform, until we get rid of unions, until we get rid of the mechanisms that are in place that are political organizations inside of our schools trying to teach our kids things outside of the normal math, science, reading, right? We're going to fail as an environment, and maybe that's the next big thing. It's just go after unions. I want to abolish unions and go into everyone that does unions and say, hey, look, you just need to drop the unions.
Here's my problem with it. I agree. I don't think standardized tests are perfect by any means. They're not. And a lot of kids are taught how to take the test, and it does take time out of school time to teach it. I just think it's unconscionable for the first year ever to get rid of standardized tests to be this year. Like, if there's ever a time to do a standardized test, to be able to gauge the effects of online learning, right, against a baseline, right? Yeah, sure, it goes up some years, it goes down some years, but you have years, in some cases decades, of examples of what kids are supposed to get.
Right.
To me, to hear the teachers say absolutely no standardized tests this year seems like a huge cop-out designed to kind of hide the failure that was e-learning. Like, this is not the year to cancel standardized tests. If we want to talk about next year, about what we do next year, this year I want every kid to take the same standardized test in English and same standardized test in math. You can get rid of the other stuff. And if you have science, same in science. Because we need to have that baseline. We just had a caller talk about how she has a good enough ratio where the teachers can go student to student and figure out what they're missing. And a lot of schools, they don't have that. So to me, a standardized test, being able to identify what happened this year, I don't know, to me, it's unconscionable. I understand the complaints about standardized tests, but to make this the year you get rid of them, it just doesn't make sense to me.
I would go backward. I would look at, here's what I would do. I would benchmark. I would benchmark schools. I would go into the best performing schools in their areas, and I would take that curriculum and I would insert it into standardized across the state. That's what I would do, and then across the country. I mean, just look at it.
But then you're not benchmarking, right? They have the data. They know what every school did last year,
right,
on English in every grade. If you do it again this year, they're afraid to have the failure actually put to paper. They're terrified of actually, for the first time, having to live with their failure. And I'm not saying that it's the teacher's fault necessarily.
But that's why they want. But that's why they want to get rid of it. That's why they want to get rid of it. But what I'm saying is that if you know that you have high performing schools in a state, right? Why is it that those are the ones that come up the most scrutiny, the ones that are doing the best? They're the ones that are actually attacked the most, right? Did you ever notice that?
Yeah.
So why not take those standards and apply those to every school? Why not actually take that curriculum, like the Liberty Tree Academy down in Colorado Springs or Falcon that I actually visited? They're teaching in 4th grade Latin, right?
Yeah.
They're teaching geometry in 7th grade, right? I mean, and the kids are, when you walk in, because I got to walk in and visit the classrooms, when you walk in, one of the kids is actually assigned to greet anyone that walks in the classroom and tell you what is actually happening in the classroom. So you'll have a child in every classroom walk up and says, "Hi, my name is Mary, and we're in math class and we're learning about geometry, curves," right? And it's cute because then they go back and sit down.
Yeah.
But in every classroom, that is how they treat people that walk in the classroom. So they're actually, and what they're teaching them is normalized curriculum. It's stuff that kids need to know. It just enhances who they are as people. In civics class, you got to talk to a guy that was 14 years he worked on the Hill, right? And he was chief of staff for one of the congressmen down in Florida. And he's talking about how when they developed the curriculum that had to do with, talking about the Roman Empire and then talking about Western civilization and the founding fathers and wheeling. And so it's just,
how do you figure out, to borrow the expression, how do you know what the kids don't know if you don't test them?
Oh,
I get the whole expand the curriculum.
I get that. I get
the whole expand curriculum. You're going to run into problems because you're going to find.
I don't have a solution. I mean, I will tell you, I don't have a solution to the problem. I just don't like it because of how they test to it. They manipulate it.
Well,
like everything else,
fine.
You manipulate it so that you look better, but it doesn't do the kids any good. So we're constantly trying to create mirages that aren't there while the kids are suffering behind it. And then we fall further and further behind. And so all I'm saying is, how can I walk into a school that the second you walk in, is unbelievable. You have Thomas Jefferson over here, right? I mean, they had pictures everywhere. You had Abraham Lincoln. You had posts that were quotes from people all throughout history, right? Inside the school. Why can't we do that? Why can't we get back to exceptionalism inside of our society by teaching the core tenets of what we are, like the things that will make us most competitive in our environment? It gives people the most opportunity. It's no wonder that you can't actually get a kid from the inner city to get out, and the chances are like winning the lottery, 1 in a billion or 1 in a trillion, Right? It's no wonder that happens when they're being taught more about the fact that you should hate police officers, that white people hate you, and oh, by the way, it's okay that you can only read at a 12-year-old's 7th grade level.
But do you understand how they actually test whether you can read at the level or not?
Mm-hmm.
That's what the standardized tests are for. I mean, they have parts of those standardized tests. That's how they've determined what a 7th grade reading level is. And that's how they're able to test the kid to see where they're at reading-wise. If they bomb a 7th grade reading and writing test, then they're not at a 7th grade reading and writing level.
And again, I just said, I don't have the answer. Like, I don't know what the perfect answer is. I don't know what the poison pill is or isn't. I just know that there are certain schools that have a track record for creating excellence, regardless of where in the socioeconomic scale that family came from. Those schools are turning out amazing children. They're turning out amazing young men and women. So why do we have to reinvent the wheel? Why is it that we let unions do what they're doing and degrade our education system and teach people to be stupid? Why do we let that happen when we have schools over here that are doing an exceptional job of pushing people out into our society? It doesn't make sense. Again, it's just an attack on our sensibility that we don't protect the thing most precious to us, which is our children, right?
Yeah.
And our children's children, right? We don't do it. We don't spend any time doing it. And I think the problem is very easy. I sat in Liberty Tree Academy down in Falcon, and I go, you guys have figured it out, right? And I go, I'm sure it was messy behind the scenes, right? Because there's a lot of pressure that goes on, but seeing the output variable, seeing what they've been able to do, and that school is only 3 years old, right? Is exceptional. The kids that are in there, exceptional. It's unbelievable. Like every kid.
So the problem you're going to run up against is that you're not going to get all the other teachers around the country to have the same give a damn mindset. You're not.
And these parents,
you're not going to be able to do it.
And these teachers
in New York City,
definitely
there is a entire public school. I don't think it's an entire building, but it's at this point, I think it's either a floor or most of a floor, where they put the teachers who have been reprimanded for being horrible teachers, but they're not allowed to fire them.
Right.
So when teachers are really bad and they don't want them teaching classes, the bargaining agreement doesn't let them fire them because they have tenure. So they just go to this building and they just sit at a desk all day long, twiddle their thumbs, do the crossword, read a book, and at the end of the day they go home and they still collect a paycheck. Right? So that's something you don't see in suburban or rural America. Teachers getting paid to do literally nothing because that's what the unions demand. Right? There's going to be a disconnect. You can't just take excellent schools and just say, okay, inner city schools do the same thing, because you're not going to be able to just transplant that. If it was that easy, you wouldn't have exceptional schools, right? If it was that easy to do, everyone would already be doing it. So yeah, it's great to say like, oh, every school should be like that, but ultimately you have to realize that if every school was like that, that school wouldn't be exceptional, or maybe they'd find other ways to be exceptional. So it's tough. It's finding a way to get as much as you can into other school districts while also understanding that the reason that school exists and is able to flourish is because they're doing things that for whatever reason every other school either refuses to do or cannot do.
So I'm going to say something that is going to ring true for those of you that are business people, right? And it'll ring true for those of you that are part of social circles. The thing that makes our education system work, right, is people. So if a school is failing, then you have the wrong people. If a business is failing, then you have the wrong people. That's the end of the story. There's nothing left to discuss.
Well, it's possible to have the right people and to still fail. I mean, every business doesn't fail simply because they had bad people. It's possible for good businesses to fail. I mean, you can't say that Kodak cameras, like how they almost went out of business and completely like are no longer a big multi-billion-dollar company.
Right.
You can't just say that Kodak went away because it's bad people. No, Kodak went away because the world moved away from actual like disposable cameras and actual film towards digital cameras, and now they're forced to actually revolutionize their whole business model. It's possible for businesses to go out of business that have good people involved. So every business that's ever failed is because they have bad people.
No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that failure in a business is because of the people. It doesn't have to be because of the person. It has to be because of the people. In other words, you talk about Kodak, or you talk about Kmart, or you talk about Sears. I mean, I go down the line of all these failed industries and failed companies that have been around. They literally were the staple of our community for many, many years. But they failed to do one thing. They failed to lead themselves down a path that would have resulted in success. So people made it fail. People did. People can lead a school from being last on the list to first on the list. There are movies about it, about principals coming in and actually graduating a school that graduated at 10% rate, at 90% rate.
Those are
They're real.
movies.
They're based on real stories of real things that happened. All right, look, people are the thing. It's the great equalizer is people. You can actually find yourself in a better situation in a business by making a decision that I'm not going to watch the ship sink. It's the character of the people that are in the company. It is people. It is 100% people. People is what makes everything in this world actually go. And that's why by destroying the ability to connect to people and create some sustainability in our education system and by just accepting bad teachers, all we're doing is destroying our children. We're destroying the next generation. And some of it, based on people in business that do the same thing, they're doing it on purpose. They just don't care about it. I'd rather sit on a beach in Florida than actually take care of my children in my classroom. I'd rather let unions come in and tell me what to teach. I'd rather just not care and go about my day 8 hours a day and be on my phone and try to teach out of a textbook or write stuff on a list and just pass kids because that's the way it is. And in Virginia, that's what they do. In Virginia, if you don't graduate from high school, they have a mandatory pass where if they interview you and you're a good person, they just pass you. And they give you a diploma. Not even passing a test. They just give you a diploma and walk you across the stage. I mean, these are big problems. We have to get to the core of the problem. And the problem is that we allow bad people, bad teachers, bad leadership, unions, which are definitely not out for anybody but themselves, right? We allow that to stay. We don't make the core.
Do you include do you include the students and the parents?
No, I think that parents expect, as you see education erode, right? I think parents expect that the education system their kids got mimics what they got, right? Most parents are just absolutely just floored when they get something that back at home that they've never paid attention to. Some parents just don't pay attention to their kids. They don't look at the homework. They don't engage with it. And so parents are responsible for teaching their kids, yes. But if you have bad teachers, if you have teachers that are just bad teachers, like they create a bad culture, they don't hold people accountable. No, I think that there's no way that child can see something different than what they get at home when their parents don't pay attention to them either. I think parents have let it happen. The parents have let teachers actually raise their kids, which is why kids are all screwed up these days. They're teaching them about gender fluidity, and the kid comes home and says, I think I'm a purple dinosaur. And the parents are like, wait, what? No, you're not. Right? But there's a conflict that's actually being created by bad people. Indoctrination in education happened because of bad people. There's a reason why we got away from science and math and all these things. It's pretty simple. Bad people. They brought in this curriculum and said, hey, we're going to teach the kids that. They knew what they were doing when they brought the curriculum in, and the teachers did one of two things. One said, I don't care about the kids enough to fight for them, so let's let this curriculum in. Or two, they actually agree with it because they want to screw up the kids anyway.
So the curriculum, in some cases, is decided by bureaucrats. In other cases, it's decided by people on the school board who are voted in by the general public in most cases. So if there's a bad curriculum, I mean, we've talked about this on the show today. We've had callers who took initiative with their kids, right? Made sure they got their kids out of a failing environment and into a good environment that would help them. I'm not saying that if your kid's failing, it's the parents' fault. But if it's a people problem and why schools fail, it can't just be the teachers, it can't just be the administrators when the curriculum ultimately gets ratified by people directly elected from the general public, right? We talked on this show about how the data shows when kids have two parents in the home, they are more likely to succeed. Not saying that single moms can't have their kids succeed, but we have to at least talk about the fact that when you have broken homes in an urban inner city school district where the parents are struggling to keep things afloat and they're not able to give as much time to their kids, they're not going to notice when their kid's failing. They're not going to notice when their kid's skipping school, right? So it doesn't make them bad people. It just makes it a failure point. And my wife taught in inner city schools in Denver, in an inner city charter school. And she told me, I think it was like 6 or 7, was the amount of kids that went to the principal's office in one day for telling her to F off. I mean, she was a great teacher. She wanted what was best for the kids. When she would have parent-teacher conferences, the parents didn't even speak English, right? Didn't even speak English, and she had no translators given to her, right? So if we're going to talk about failure points, we talk about failure points. But if it's a people problem, it's not just a systemic problem. If it's a people problem, then yeah, the people are also the students. If you have kids in an inner city class who do not care about whether they learn multiplication, division or not, you can't put it on the teachers for the fact that they don't know multiplication or division. And some of it has to go on the parents. Sorry, if any one of them are listening to me, like, it starts at home. It ultimately starts at home. And we've had tons of callers today talk about how they took the initiative to get their kids in a better school. That's success. Identifying that the kid is not being best served by the school that they're in. So I'm not willing to just give parents and students a pass and say that it's only the teachers.
I don't give parents a free pass. I don't give parents a free pass. That's why I go out and do things like I did when my kids were growing up. I coached soccer. I coached sports for them. Right? I didn't even play soccer. I coached it. I had to learn it. Went and played it myself. That's why I got involved in making sure that I could help young people and mentoring kids in different areas, because some parents are just deficient. But the teachers have a larger opportunity. That a parent can screw up one kid, a teacher can screw up 30.
Yeah, no, that's definitely possible. That's definitely possible. If we're going to just say, though, that the reason a school fails is because it's all bad teachers and all bad administrators,
right?
And you look at the actual demographics of who is in the school. I'm not talking about race or socioeconomic, though that definitely plays a factor, at least from a demographic perspective. Kids who don't care.
Yeah.
I mean, they're studying it in Chicago. School dropouts have increased in online learning. Think about that. More kids are dropping out of school because of online learning. You would think it would be the opposite, that they're saying, hey, wait a minute, I can get a degree just by sitting at home, but it's actually increasing dropout rates.
Right.
Right. So it's a much more complicated formula than just the reason schools fail is because teachers and administrators are bad.
Listen, every opportunity that I've had, every single opportunity that I've had, every opportunity of walking into a company and looking at what they're doing has always been related to poor leadership when you see it degrade, right? Because they lack the ability to stand in and make tough decisions. They just watch it happen. Same thing could be happening in schools, right? I mean, listen, you cannot walk into a school that literally they're failing, 70% dropout rate, and say that the parent or the teachers and the administration of that school doesn't have a part to play in it, a big part to play in it.
I'm not saying that right? Not saying they don't have a big part to play in it. I'm just saying that the students and the parents do as well.
But the reality of it is, and I think we circle back around this on standardized testing, they prop things up in some areas, and that hides deficiencies. So rather than looking at deficiency and actually building towards strengthening that weakness, they don't do that. They ignore it. They try to, it's okay to have that weakness. We become the country of apologetics, right? We find ourselves in that place where we're just allowing things to just fester because we don't have proper leadership. They're not even looking at it because it's not important to them, because someone out there is saying, here's what you have to hold yourself to. Here's what we're looking at, rather than looking at making sure we find good leadership to actually be teachers. I think teachers should be the best people in our environment, not just some mediocre person walking in. I think there's a lot of really good teachers. A teacher changed my life. Like my teacher, Miss Bradley, like, she changed my life. She did a lot of really great things for me. She's the one that settled me down from being a derelict and said, hey, look, you have talent, you have ability, you're really smart, quit trying to act like you're not. And she mentored me through 2 years of my life, literally, as I'm getting suspended in school for doing stupid stuff, right? Playing sports, doing stuff that I needed to do, but she settled me down, right? And I think that good teachers can have an effect on generations of kids, where bad teachers can literally ruin an entire generation of kids. Ruin them.
Oh, that's definitely true. That's definitely true. I'm just saying that if we're going to talk about leadership, the number one leadership position in a child's education is their parents. The number one leader. Before they ever step foot in a school, they are taught by their parents. And if the parents aren't involved, aren't committed to making sure that they get a good education, don't act surprised if they don't.
Yeah.
Not saying it's all the parents' fault, but the parents in every case all the callers we've talked to, the parents in all those cases have a chance to step in, get involved, and to right the ship. Not saying that it's their fault that the ship is off track. But if you have parents who, through no fault of their own, or maybe they just don't care, aren't able to take that hands-on approach, aren't able, like, the kid comes home, hey, they don't even ask if he did his homework. Right? I mean, that's what I'm talking about. Not saying that it's all their fault, but it's more complicated, I think, than you're making it out to be. These problems are systemic. We talk about, you say you want the best teachers, right? But can we afford to pay teachers a larger salary? I mean, teachers are underpaid. I agree. I think bad teachers are overpaid. I think that's pretty obvious. But when you see that teachers are making 35, 40 grand a year, you're not going to get the best, the cream of the crop, right? You're not going to get the best educators if you're not willing to pay them. Well, if you have to pay them more, what happens to everyone else's taxes? Everyone's property taxes go up. Income taxes go up. Sales taxes go up. Can we afford that? No, not right now in a pandemic where we've just had the economy artificially shuttered. Right? So it's very, very complicated. It's not an issue where you can just fix it and just say, we need better teachers. Because you can have the best teachers. My wife can tell you she had great teachers in that Denver school, but the kids just refused to learn. Right? They just refuse to learn.
No.
You can't draw water from a rock.
They did not refuse to learn. That's not what happened. What happened was, and I'll just go back to it, you had good teachers, right? And you had poor leadership that wouldn't stand behind the teachers. So it made it impossible for you to actually hold those kids to any consequence.
That's true. Yeah,
right?
That's true.
So
partially.
again, it is. I mean, I was listening to those conversations, right? And I know that she couldn't get support.
And when they would call the parents, the parents didn't care. Parents didn't care.
Then you got to find.
If a teacher calls
it's the same thing. The same thing we talk about Kodak and the Sears and Kmart and everything else. If you know that you can't get through to a child one way, you have to pivot and find a way to connect to them another. I'm sorry. If you want to go and you sell a shirt and you got a 800,000 square foot building, right? But you know that you don't need 800,000 square feet and you can actually still make money and it's all about merchandising. You can shrink your footprint. You can reduce your costs. You can have people that negotiate for better product. Those brands died because of leadership. It died because of the people inside the organization. And the schools right now are dying because the parents, they're standing up, but the school boards, they're not. And the school teachers, nope, they're on a beach in Florida. I know because I met one, right? It's people. People are screwing up these kids, and they don't care. Like, I still get paid to stay home. The teachers in Chicago are like, I'm not coming to work. It has nothing to do with not wanting to come to work. They're getting paid to not work. To basically put something online and say, hey, just read that. Here, Zoom call at 3 o'clock. Okay, go back to work. They're graduating to the lowest common denominator.
I'm not saying that they're not involved and that bad teachers and bad administrators, bad bureaucrats aren't responsible for this. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that it's more complicated than that. When you look at the data, kids drop out of high school. They're not dropping out of high school because there's bad teachers. They're dropping out of high school because they got someone pregnant before they've even turned 17.
The pregnancies are down like 80% from when I was a kid. They're down
they're getting hooked on drugs. They're getting dragged into a gang, right? They don't have parents there to give them the guidance. We can talk about, we've had whole shows, Joe, about the need to have parents who are involved. And when you look at everything we've talked about, the reasons why people drop out of school, the reasons why we have rising crime rates, the systemic problems, the problems where it's just a cycle. Yes, there are bad teachers, absolutely. But if every single teacher in school was the best possible teacher, and every single teacher and every single administrator was the best, right? You'd still have kids dropping out of school because when you trace it back to the family, they're not getting the guidance, they're not getting the lessons that they need from their parents. The two leaders that are supposed to mean the most in their life, they're not getting that guidance. I guarantee you, if every school was the best school in the country, you'd still have the crime, you still have the dropouts, you still have the drug addiction, not because the teachers. Yes, teachers are bad. We need good teachers, but it all starts at home.
No,
it all starts
it doesn't. At home. It doesn't. It does not. I think it does start at home. Yes, I think it starts at home. I think the parents are responsible. I get that. But if your entire society around your parents, I've seen good parents lose their kids. Lose them to dropping out.
I've seen inner city kids get inserted into the best schools.
Right.
I've seen it. I went to private schools. I went to very good public schools. I've seen what happens when they take someone out of, let's say, Trenton, New Jersey, and they drop them into a great public school or they drop them into a great private school, and they fail. They fail at every level, not because the teachers are bad, because they don't have the foundational knowledge. They don't have the parents in their corner going to parent-teacher conferences and saying, well, what can I do? How can I help my son or my daughter get ahead? Right? It's a very hands-on approach. And if you're missing that part of it, you can have the best teachers. You have the best curriculums. If the kid isn't taught to care about what that teacher's teaching them, it's still going to go in one ear and out the other.
Okay, so let's hypothetically say what you're saying is right. Right? Let's hypothetically say you're right.
Let's hypothetically say that I'm telling the truth about my life experiences. Go ahead.
No. Okay, call it what you want. I have a different life experience, and by the way, I have 7 other brothers and sisters. You have good parents, right? And you have the people that don't. Let's say the people that have great parents, and they still end up down that path where they fall off and into the ocean. How does that happen? That pay attention to everything and that go to parent-teacher conferences. I still think it comes down to leadership. It comes down to people. And why do you have schools that 100% underperform everyone? That everyone that goes through it, only the kids that literally read books at home and are taken care of outside of that structure are actually thriving in that system, in that environment. How is that true? Because it comes down to people. Well, all I'm saying is if we really want to just solve the problem, let's at least solve the basic problem, which is getting people inside the schools, inside the school board that actually represent the interests of the kids, not themselves. Because it's not happening.
The way you get people on the school board is you get the parents to care. The parents are the voters.
Yeah, the school board. I would not want to be I would not want to be on a school board ever anywhere because you can't make anyone happy. I mean, there's no making anyone happy being on the school board. Everyone hates you, right? But if we got to basic curriculum and actually just eliminated all this stuff, I think we'd be in a much better place. And yes, I do believe if we brought God back into schools, it would actually improve things as well. I do.
Yeah, well, you can't bring God into public schools.
Hey, Colton said both of us are right.
You can't bring God into public schools. If you want to bring God into the kids' lives, it's going to have to come from the parents.
Well, you can bring God into the public schools if you do it in such a way that you're actually just inviting God, right? So in other words, you can't get away from the fact that our founding fathers were men of faith. Can't. Sorry.
That's absolutely true.
So
that's absolutely true.
You can actually teach that and be true.
If a public school teacher tries to lead their class in a denominational prayer, they will be shut down immediately. Not saying it's right, just saying it's unrealistic to say that the way to solve any problem is to have public school teachers start praying.
All right, so
it's unrealistic.
Everybody wants me to give you an update real quick on the IPO, right? So I'm going to give a quick update.
Sure, quick, because we're already over time. But go ahead.
All right, so we built an entire model so everyone understands, and we had to make it so that everyone could be involved. So it's great to be able to go out there, get institutional investors, but I think one of the things is that this whole idea of doing a raise came on this show. And so we've had an immense amount of success with people outside that says, okay, I'll give you $4 million, I'll give you $5 million, I'll give you $10 million, but making sure that you could contribute. So we came up with a plan that allowed for us to do things very quickly, and I'll kind of walk through what that looks like. So there's a initial raise. So the initial raise will be $10 million. $5 million comes from crowd equity, so a hybrid of crowd equity and strategic accredited investors. That allows for me to get people involved, be able to set a stock price at $17.76. We can actually do that, right? And then from there, it allowed us to build on the IPO strategy for a conversion. So then the first acquisition from that, and we think we'll get that done by the end of March. So in the next 2 to 3 weeks, we'll have that piece in play. We'll be able to file all the documentation that's necessary with the SEC because you still have to file a form. We moved to first acquisition. First acquisitions, we've identified some over-the-counter publicly traded technology companies with reduced revenue and then, frankly, mismanaged sales processes. Maybe I wouldn't call it mismanaged, but I would say it's not optimized. So we think that we can actually acquire one of those and that this will allow us to have a current strategy that works off of a publicly traded technology asset and that has a risk-neutral environment. So good for us. We figure we can get that done by the end of May. Then we have a primary raise, which will allow us through that engine once we've actually been able to stabilize, have financial reporting, and make sure the proper auditing structures in place. we can execute a raise of $350 million. That'll again bring it back to people in the community to say they want to invest. Anyone can actually invest in that. And for that, we want to just basically acquire operating data center structures across the nation, or build them, and make sure that those targets are in places that closely align with what we have for values. So Texas, Florida, Oklahoma, Kentucky, Alabama. I'm sure there's more. And the data centers will also include real estate. And I'm not going to put out the whole business plan, but from there we'll look at also acquiring secondary technology to support the overall company goals. So those technologies include like headless e-commerce, digital traffic analytics, and other technology that's on our list. We have a tier 2 list. Then we have a period of stabilization. So we think we can get that done by August 2021, pending any SEC-related raise issues. And then stabilization is going to be 9 to 12 months after that, and then we'll do a secondary raise for $450 million, again, to increase our breadth of what we're doing, make sure that we have stable environments on the tech side, and then have some other secondary acquisition targets. Now, we're not looking we may build some of these, but some of the technology that we want to acquire will be technology that already has current revenue streams. And so as we walk through this process and figure out what this is looking like and how it's going to be most effective, we want to make sure we eliminate risks. So we will have a business unit structure that we'll actually build out, and each unit will be responsible for its own revenue, and we use some of that revenue to actually increase or grow while we're picking up different debt instruments and raises as well. So it's the model is pretty clear. It gives us an alternate path to technology and innovation. And because I've done it before, I think that it's really easy to try and figure out what are the best technologies out there. Where are we going in 3, 5, 10 years? You'll notice I didn't talk about social platforms because we're looking for partnerships in those areas. Things like Parler, which I think can survive very clearly if it gets back online. And then, a tier 3 or something happens down the line is actually, creating a strategic partnership to build out our own phones or phone systems, as well as, if not the phone systems, the app platforms that are on there. So with that said, Max, did you know that even if they take down an app off of Parler or other places, even when they take it down, if you jailbreak your phone, you can actually build your own. There's app store environments where you can build apps and put them on your phone, on an
yes,
iPhone.
If you have an Android.
No,
iPhone's very, very hard. iPhone is very, very hard. And they can actually take it down, and you lose your warranty. They make it very, very difficult to jailbreak iPhones. And unfortunately, most people don't have the technical knowledge to just jailbreak their phone. But yeah, it is possible. It's not as consumer friendly as an Android process is.
Yeah, but you can actually just build a business off of just jailbreaking phones, right? And building app environments for Apple phones. But Android's easy. You don't need there's a file that you can actually take and put it on an Android that's an app on the phone that's outside of the App Store. Easy to do on Android, not so easy to do on Apple. But as I'm digging more into this, I didn't even know this was a thing, that you can actually you can take the same app you have on Parler and put it on an Android phone like that.
Yeah.
Right? So something to consider.
Very easy on Android,
SDK,
but it's just not necessarily feasible for the average consumer on an iPhone to do it. They deliberately make it hard so the average person can't. Well, that's going to be it for this edition of the podcast. Ran a little over on the second hour, but that's okay. If you like the podcast, make sure you subscribe to the audio versions of the podcast. You can do that by subscribing to us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Pandora, iHeartRadio, TuneIn, or Podbean. We go live Monday through Saturday, 2 p.m. Eastern, on Facebook, YouTube, DLive. Make sure that if you like the podcast today, make sure you hit that share button. Make sure you give us a thumbs up and comment. There's also a link if you want to donate. You donate there, especially on DLive. They shut down our Lemons, but we do have a donate button in one of our panels. So you can check that out there. If you haven't already, make sure you text the word FREEDOM to 89517. Get a text alert. We have a link in our description to sign up for our email alerts. Very, very important. And also we are on Rumble, rumble.com/user/conservative daily. Well, that's going to be it for this edition of the podcast. My name is Max McGuire.
And this is Joe Altman.
And remember, everyone, that the fight to take back our country clearly isn't over yet, but the only way we win is if we all stand up and fight together.